So meeting 4, September 17, 2019. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? And please remain standing afterwards for a moment of silence for Senator Bucco, who passed away this week. Served us for many, many years. He was in the 25th District, but he was also a former mayor, freeholder, state assemblyman, and senator. Please keep him in your thoughts, his family. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Open Public Meetings Act, please, Michelle.
According to the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting has been given to the Daily Record. Notice has been posted in the Municipal Building, 204 Flanders Drakestown Road, Bud Lake, New Jersey, and notices were sent to those requesting the same.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda.
Here.
Mr. Ferrante.
Here.
Mrs. Labow. Mr. Mania.
Here.
Mr. Stewart.
Here.
Mr. Roman.
Here.
Mr. Nacastro.
Here. Mayor, you have a proclamation to read.
I do. POW MIA Recognition Day in Mount Olive. Whereas all Americans owe an extraordinary debt of gratitude and appreciation to all the men and women who have served in the armed forces of the United States. And whereas we must give special tribute to the brave service members who have been imprisoned while protecting the well-being of their country and those who remain missing. And whereas the second annual POW MIA Vigil to be held for 20 hours on September 20 through 21 at the POW MIA Remembrance Wall at the All Veterans Memorial in Turkey Brook Park in Mount Olive honors and remembers all of the Morris counties and New Jersey's POW MIAs. And whereas September 20 is National POW MIA Recognition Day, which emphasizes that our soldiers' sacrifices are not forgotten and that it is vital to keep alive the memory of and the sense of duty to our nation's prisoners of war and missing in action and their families. And whereas in 1990, the 101st Congress designated the National League of POW MIA Families flag as a symbol of our nation's concern and commitment to resolve as fully as possible the fates of Americans still prisoner, missing, and unaccounted for in Southeast Asia, thus ending the uncertainty for their families and the nation. And whereas the symbol continues to evoke the commitment to recognizing that not only those who have served in the armed forces of the United States in defense of our national principles and for the freedoms and liberty that we enjoy as a nation, but also the family members and friends of our county's prisoners of war and our unreturned veterans, Americans, MIAs. And whereas the Morris County American Legion, the All Veterans Alliance, and many other committed organizations have undertaken the task of standing in vigil for 24 hours, keeping lit the flame of the memorial fire and calling out the names of New Jersey's missing during a ceremony at the POW MIA Remembrance Wall. Now therefore, I, Robert J. Greenbaum, Mayor of Mount Olive Township, do proclaim September 20, 2019 as POW MIA Recognition Day in Mount Olive to honor and remember our POWs and MIAs.
Thank you, Mayor. We do have a executive session we need to go into for a short meeting. So at this time, I'm going to ask Mr. Mania to take us into executive session.
Thank you, Mr. President. According to Section 7 and 8 of the Open Public Meetings Act, I make a motion we move into executive session to discuss PBA contract, Combi Fill, discuss contract, noting that the minutes will be available upon conclusion of the issue.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? No, thank you. All right, if everyone would, okay. We have a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. So we're back in session for our public meeting, and we're continuing on with resolutions. We have 10 resolutions. Does anyone have any questions on the resolutions? Was that a no?
Nope.
Okay. Thank you. We have one ordinance for first reading and one for second reading. Do we have any questions on those? Mr. Roman?
Andrew, on the one for second reading, is that going to preclude us from having possible extension onto the Patriots Way if we were to do so?
No, so the reading that's on for second reading is just to appropriate more money for the current project. The one bid came in a little over budget, so we want to give ourselves a little contingency if there's any change orders. But to answer your question specifically, we are making plans to this current contract to allow for future expansion if Patriots Way were to be tied in at a future date. All we have to do is just put a T connection near that intersection, and then we could do another project if the council wishes.
Thank you.
So that answers the questions that I guess we were wondering about as well, about this expansion. So I know the engineers are here, but I don't think anybody have any questions for them or not. This would be the time, I would guess, to bring it up. So,
I mean, you want to bring this into now or bring it up?
I
in-
think-
you want to do it at council?
Yeah, because this is just the
Yeah,
second
this is just to
reading
hear,
on the
okay.
bond
We'll do it at
ordinance,
the
so-
council one then before the time. Okay. Does anyone have any old business? Mr. Roman?
Andrew, have you got any opportunity to do, reach with the chief regarding body cam procedure and what the implementation schedule he has in mind?
I did. He did supply a memo to me. At this point, he's still not in favor of implementing body cameras, just due to the fact that I guess policies are still changing, and there's a lot of unknowns with the retention schedule, and he has some other concerns with privacy issues on some domestic violence type calls that they go into. So at this point, there are no plans to implement it.
Could you forward that memo to us?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Andrew, I know it was in one of the memos a while back. But where are we with the website? We're almost,
Yeah, we all got trained yesterday, or was that today? Yesterday on,
they all blend together.
yeah, we had training yesterday, so, I don't wanna rush it, but
Right.
I think the goal is before the league, I'd like to get it out there.
Okay, so by the end of October roughly, we're looking at getting everything up and live.
And we should be going live, or with the live streaming should be available also first or second meeting in October.
Oh, that's
We ordered a cabinet, to store all the equipment, but it got damaged on delivery, so we don't wanna set it up until everything is
Okay.
secure back there.
Yep.
That's
Thank
also-
you very much. Mr. Mania?
Andrew, who was the low bidder for the International Drive? Top Line didn't make it?
Yeah, there was, the resolution is on for tonight. The low bidder, had a default in their bid, so they withdrew, and, we're going with the second low bidder, and the price was only a couple $100 difference. So I believe it was Top Line and
Tilcon.
Telcon. So Telcon was the low bidder, Top Line is getting the contract.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you. Any other old business?
And by the way, a great job on that PVA contract. Thank you.
Any new business? Mr. Roman?
As I was sitting here, listening to the mayor talk to the future of Mount Olive and possibly New Jersey, one of the things that came to mind is, I mean, we all received requests to have a grocery store in the old AMP, and I know of all the efforts that we have done as far as trying to attract another grocery store there. But I would like the administration and our attorneys to see if if we can come up with a sort of either a tax incentive program to see if it's legally possible to just target a specific type of business, assuming that, you know, the rest of the body agrees with an approach like that. But first off, I guess we should find out whether it's something that I can see by the shake it's not supported by.
Well, I think, again, it's a misunderstanding in terms of what is actually occurring there. You have a property owner who is obviously the owner of the property, so the tax incentive would go to the property owner. We've already met with the property owner. I said, look, whatever it's gonna take that we can legally do. The problem is that the space is so, it's not adequate for today's supermarket. When one of the large supermarkets looked at it, they said it would take at least $8 million to bring the store up to what today's shopper is looking for. So it's not a question of, I mean, we could abate the entire rent on that shopping center, and it's not going to in any way change the situation for a store coming in. You know, that's what we met with the property owner about, to say, look, if we did something with your taxes, could you lower the rent or give free rent to a supermarket coming in? That's exactly the way that we approached it, and it really had no effect in terms of interest. There are several problems, as I said, with that. First of all, the space was too large. It's smaller now. It doesn't have access from Route 46 East. You have to turn off of Norright, which is a problem in and of itself to a supermarket. It doesn't have the demographics. It's too close to a number of existing supermarkets. While it's an inconvenience for people who live on our side of town, the fact remains that it's, you know, only 10 to 15 minutes to Mansfield or 10 to 15 minutes to Flanders. And so when the supermarket chains look at that, they make the determination that that is a distance which would be competitive to them in terms of coming into that space. So, plus you had a dying shopping center. One of the things which is really very beneficial to that shopping center, although we don't need another gym in town, is the fact that Nitro's coming in, because it's going to create traffic in that shopping center, which will then help spur further development. And at some point, someone is going to come look at the space, but there's not a tax incentive, even if we could by law, that we could give to the property owner that is going to spur a supermarket to come into that space. We looked at it, it didn't fly.
I'm glad that the administration has been looking at multiple ways and that we can get something in there.
Alex, I actually looked at the possibility of the municipality operating a supermarket itself. That's how far I took thinking outside the box in terms of what we could do to get a supermarket in there. I'm very keenly aware of the desire of people on that side of town to have a supermarket go into that space, and we have done everything humanly possible that I can think of to make it happen. Literally, I had research done as to whether or not the municipality could operate a supermarket. It's just that the logistics of it are just mind-boggling.
Oh, no, I recognize that the grocery store is probably one of the least profit margin businesses out there.
I went to Fratelli Beretta, and I tried to interest them in opening up like a craft kind of supermarket where everybody rents, like an artisan kind of supermarket, where Fratelli Beretta would have the meats, and then they'd bring in a cheese company and get the space back into use in that fashion, which I thought was a great idea. However, Fratelli Beretta would then be competing with their supermarkets where they sell their product. They weren't interested. So we have looked at and explored and dissected that particular issue, reaching out to, the Lidls of the world. Every time someone mentions a supermarket, there's one that went in Califon, we reached out to them to see if they had an interest in coming. Off-brands, I know there's like an Olive Tree down on Route 10 in Denville. We've reached out to everybody we can think of. At one point, I was hopeful that an independent supermarket had an interest, and they actually did a market study, but I haven't heard anything back from the property owner since then. So if somebody's got some ideas, I'm all for doing it, and just let me know. But I think we've pretty much explored everything that we can think of.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other new business? Mr. Owen?
It's new/old. I read your memo, Andrew, regarding the Patriots Way connection, so just, and I know we just touched on it a little bit in the ordinance. So I just want to, we have the engineers here today. I was wondering if they're available at this moment to, give us an update as to how we got here.
I think I could probably give you a better idea of how we got to where we are today.
Okay.
They could probably answer any technical questions as far as any future expansion or limited expansion. I did go through the entire file, and I went through files of all past documents, proposals, so I kind of put a timeline together of how it started and how we got to where we are. So this started over 12 years ago. Back in May 2007, a feasibility study was initiated by our engineering firm at the time. It was broken up into two sections. One was the old Flanders Triangle, which was Main Street, North Road, Park Place, and Patriots Way. And then there was another option for Beaver Lane, Clark Lane, Mountain Ave, and North Road. So I think initially the plan was to connect, or try to see what the feasibility was of connecting all those 160 so homes. Dollar figures did come back. We did have some estimates. Multiple surveys went out to neighborhoods throughout that whole process. It got scaled down to about 107 properties once they eliminated some of the homes that were in the Highlands. More surveys went out with new numbers. It was again then scaled back again, and the point at that point was just to take care of all the homes that had the cesspools, and that's kind of how we got to where we are today, to this limited scope. Initially, it was going to be a gravity system, but then the cost escalated, and we brought it back again to a low pressure system that needs the grinder pumps. So, throughout the years, it just got scaled back smaller and smaller to a point where we're just taking care of the immediate public health concern of the cesspools in the area.
So I am correct in understanding that the overwhelming majority of the people that are going to be currently serviced right now is mainly cesspools, and it was mostly done because of environmental concerns and future impacts?
From my,
I don't think that's accurate, Alex. I think that the area which ultimately was serviced, that is going to get the service, is the area where the cesspools were.
Right.
I don't know that the majority of the houses, and you know what, this goes back years already, as you know. I don't know that a majority of the houses had cesspools, but all of the cesspools that needed to be dealt with are in the area where ultimately it was scaled back to.
And because one of the issues that had arisen was that at this time, Patriots Way was overlooked. Is there a significant difference between the cost to the homeowner in the previous plan from 6 years ago to the one that is currently approved? Like the overall?
I think it went down because we got legal advice. This is my recollection. It went down because we got legal advice in terms of ultimately how the funding mechanism could be worked.
Correct.
That's my recollection, that you could only charge the homeowner for the value, the increased value of their house as a result of the system being installed. And correct me if I'm wrong, Susan, but that's my recollection.
And at that time, if I'm not mistaken as well, when we came back, we found out that we can also finance some of the help with them to the cost, because the
Right.
cost was a
For the
huge
connection.
issue
Yeah,
for
but,
them.
that cost is still being borne by.
Right, but it was
the
all at once. That was the bigger issue. I
homeowner.
remember that
You're
people were
still
saying too
looking-
much.
I think originally the estimate was somewhere around 60.
Right.
And the cost now, when all is said and in, is still somewhere potentially around 40.
Right, but it's fun, it's for them, it's a longer term period to pay. They don't have to put it up one shot.
But it's still,
It's still a big cost.
it's a big cost.
Right.
and because we went to the low pressure system, that also
brought it
dropped
down.
the
Correct.
price as well.
Right.
And being that we went to the low pressure system, I assume that it's going to make it a whole lot easier in the future if we were to tie in the Patriots Way and any other, probably not the Beaver.
There's limited expansion on this system.
Okay.
The way it was
The
designed.
engineer can really
yeah,
answer the
It
question.
was designed specifically for this one neighborhood, though. Bob?
Yeah, correct. It's a low-pressure system, so it's designed specifically for the area it's attempting to serve. It's a balancing act between the sizing of the pipes and the sizing of the pumps and the number of connections in the various zones. So you have a situation where you're trying to size the piping system based on having an adequate number of connections at that point, so you maintain the velocity in the system, and not too many homes at the connection, so you have a pressure head situation. So the system, it's a very balanced system. There's 6 zones in this particular one. Pipe sizes varying from 3-inch mains out in the street to the connection into the gravity system down to 1.5 inches on some of the smaller runs. But even within that parameters, after this question came up, we did go back and look at the calculations. There is a little, I mean, there's not a lot of wiggle room in there, but there is some room in there to accommodate some additional connections. The connection point that Andrew was talking about for Patriots Lane was just a way of, while we're tearing the street up, just to put the connection physically there, so that in the future, if there was a desire to hook those, I think it's 6 homes in there, if I'm not mistaken, into the system, that could be accommodated under a separate project.
And would it be more cost effective to force those residents to connect now versus later on in the future?
Well, part of the, I don't call it a dilemma, the system as it evolved, when this changed back to the pressure system that G. Mazinski wrote back in 2018, I think it was, or yeah, a year and a half ago, I guess it was. It had to be it had to be a specific parameter you're designing it for, which is the 43 homes that were currently connection. That's what we went to the state with for a permit, because there is a permit had to be issued by the state for the connection. So this particular project is very specific in its design in terms of the number of homes it's going to serve and how the system was designed. There's leeway in the design for additional connections, but you'd have to go back to the state. Not an overly complicated process, but you'd have to go back to the state for any, additional connections you were looking to accommodate.
I would imagine it would also require additional engineering to a small degree.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've done some preliminary, not detailed design. We're just trying to look a little preliminarily at what capabilities, what the parameters might be. So we're confident in the fact that some additional connections can be made, but you can't really design it until you know who they are and where they are.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you.
Welcome.
Appreciate it. Any other new business? Mr. Roman?
When the passing of Fred DeToro happened, we had a huge vacancy in institutional knowledge and leadership. And now with the, I guess it's a matter of, as I get older, I keep seeing more people pass or paying attention. Have we got a succession plan in place for key personnel in the township? Have we been working on that?
I would say in certain departments, there are some employees that are identified as potential leaders. In certain departments, it's hard to have that put in place. For example, the CFO position, right now, there's no one in the department that has the availability to just step in and take that position over. But we send our employees to training, and we do what we can to plan for that.
We let them get master's degrees. I'll give you an example where succession planning actually is working well, which is in the health department. Obviously, Trevor works very closely with Derek, and Derek is getting all the degrees which are necessary to be able to step in the event that there is a change in that department. The court system has always had a succession planning in terms of trying to get their people to get the appropriate certifications and degrees. So in the event that the court administrator retires or is unable to do the job, someone can step in. Doesn't always work that way. Clerk's office is another example where Michelle is always looking to get her people to have the appropriate degrees, and obviously we've had successive clerks coming from within and without missing a beat, basically. So where we can, we do, but it's not always possible.
Right, and I think we should at least set plan to paper, and at least so in the event that something were to occur, we already have a standard operating procedure in place as to this is what we'll be doing, instead of all of a sudden now having to have a meeting about what we're going to do.
Yeah, I'm not planning to go anywhere if that's what you're getting at.
But to further your point out, we were able to hire the vacant positions internally, so while we might not have had a concrete succession plan, we had qualified individuals within the organization that stepped up and.
Right, I just want to make sure that, not only that the township is protected, not just in the short term, but in the long term. Thank you.
Any other new business?
Nope, I'm good.
Thank you. Does anyone from the public wish to be heard at this time? Seeing none? You want to go or the council meeting, you have an option. You can go here or go on the council meeting. This one, you just, this one's recorded, the council meeting is word for word, it's written down, recorded. The other one.
If you do it during the public session,
Right.
the verbatim, your comments will be typed out verbatim. If you do it during this, and the other meeting goes very quickly, it'll just be a couple of minutes before we get to the next public session. If you do it here, it's just a summary of what you got up and talked about the sewer.
If you
Yeah.
have your name on Google Alerts, it'll show up in the next meeting.
That's it.
Yeah, the suggestion is to wait until
Wait
the
for the
public
council.
meeting if you
Yeah.
have something of substance to say, unless you have to get out of here. But it goes very quickly the next meeting, you'll see.
Yep. So anyone from the public wish to be heard at this time? Seeing none, close to the public. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None. I will open the Mount Olive Township Council meeting for September 17, 2019. Michelle, please read the Open Public Meetings Act, please.
According to the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of this meeting has been given to the Daily Record. Notice has been posted in the Municipal Building, 204 Flanders Drakestown Road, Bud Lake, New Jersey, and notices were sent to those requesting the same.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda.
Here.
Mr. Ferrante.
Here.
Mrs. Labau. Mr. Mania.
Here.
Mr. Stewart.
Here.
Mr. Roman.
Here.
Mr. Nacastro.
Here. Mr. Amianda, would you approve the minutes from September 3rd workshop, public meeting, and closed session, please?
Yes, Mr. President. I make a motion for approval of minutes of previous meetings on September 3rd, 2019, closed session, and all present. September 3rd, 2019, work session, all present. And on September 3rd, 2019, public meeting, all members of the council present.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda.
Here,
Mr. Ferrante.
Yes.
Mr. Mania.
Yes.
Mr. Stewart.
Yes.
Mr. Roman.
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro.
Yes, we have 16 pieces of correspondence. Anyone have anything on those? Seeing none, I open the hearing to the public on ordinance number 18-2019, a bond ordinance providing a supplemental appropriation of $500,000 for the sewer improvements to Old Flanders area of the Township of Mount Olive in the County of Morris, New Jersey, and authorizing the issuance of 500,000 bonds or notes of the township to finance part of the cost thereof. Mr. Ferrante.
Caught me off guard.
Caught you off guard.
First reading or second? Move for approval. Second reading?
Second.
This is
Public hearing.
public hearing, okay.
Just move for approval.
I move for adoption and final passage. 18. Ordinance
It's 18-2000.
18-2000.
18-2019.
Second.
Anyone from the public wish to be heard at this time on this ordinance? Seeing none, closed to the public. Did you have something you want to say on this? Okay. Then closed to the
Thumbs up, right, sir.
public. Closed to the public. Anyone from council? Roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda.
yes.
Mr. Ferrante.
Yes.
Mr. Mania.
Yes.
Mr. Stewart.
Yes.
Mr. Roman.
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro.
Yes. Ordinance number 18-2019 is passed on second reading, and I hereby direct the clerk to forward a copy of the same to the mayor and publish notice of adoption as required by law. I open up the next item on the agenda for first reading is ordinance number 19-2019, an ordinance of the Township of Mount Olive in the County of Morris, State of New Jersey, to amend Chapter 550 entitled Land Use of the Revised General Ordinances of the Township of Mount Olive to amend the Mount Olive zoning map in order to establish an overlay zone on Lot 10 in Tax Block 4100 within the Commercial Light Industrial Zone District for solar, photovoltaic energies. I say it right? I'm sorry. Yeah, that's right. Facility in accordance with the Comeville North redevelopment plan and established development regulations for the same. Ms. Laybau's not here, so who's got Mr. Roman?
I move that ordinance number 19-2019 be introduced by title and passed on first reading, and that a meeting be held on October 1st, 2019 at 7 p.m. at the Municipal Building, 204 Flanders Drakestown Road, Bud Lake, New Jersey, for a public hearing, consideration of second reading, and passage of said ordinance, and that the clerk be directed to publish post to make available said ordinance in accordance with the requirements of the law.
Second.
Does anyone from the public wish to be heard on this ordinance? Seeing none, close to the public. Anyone from council? Roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Fronte?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes. We have 10 consent resolutions. Anyone wish to move any to non-consent? Seeing none, Mr. Mania, would you move resolutions 1 through 10, please?
Thank you, Mr. President. I move for consent resolutions 1 through 10.
Second.
Anyone from the public wish to be heard on consent resolutions? Seeing none, close to the public. Anyone from council, anything on them? Roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Fronte?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes. Mr. Stewart, would you please move the bill list?
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill list for adoption and final passage.
Second.
Does anyone from the public wish to have anything on the bill list? Seeing none, close to the public. Council, any comments, concerns? Nothing? Roll call, please.
Mr. Amianda?
Yes.
Mr. Fronte?
Yes.
Mr. Mania?
Yes.
Mr. Stewart?
Yes.
Mr. Roman?
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro?
Yes. Administrative reports.
I met with the county today. They gave me an update on Route 206 and Main Street intersection. They are moving forward with engineering designs. They're going to put in their 2020 budget to hire an engineer and design something there. And they're also taking the lead on any potential property acquisition. So, and they're going to work with the developer of Wawa to put that all together. So,
Looking
it's
good.
moving.
Yep, that's a good sign. Anything else? Nothing? Okay. Thank you. Any old business? Seeing none, any new business? Seeing none, any legal matters?
Nothing to report tonight.
Thank you. Council reports. Mr. Amianda, anything on Board of Education or seniors?
None.
Nothing. Okay. Sorry. Thank you. Mr. Ferranti, anything on environmental, lake, or library?
No, I did pass on the harmful algae bloom report from our analyst. I sent that over to the environmental committee. So if they come back with any questions, I'll report back.
Thank you. Mr. Stewart, anything on economic development or community action panel?
The Community Action Panel meets this Thursday and the EDC next week.
Thank you. Mr. Mania, anything on legislative or planning board?
Planning Board met last Thursday. I Spy Media will be carried to October 10th, and the meeting schedule for this Thursday has been canceled.
Thank you. Mr. Roman, anything on recreation or pride committee?
Nothing to report.
Thank you. At this time, does anyone from the public wish to be heard? If you do, you can go up to the podium here and just state your name and address for the record.
Anthony Cifaretto, 7 Patriots Way, a.k.a. A.J. Croy. Mr. Roman knows me. Yeah, I want to speak about the...
We won't hold that against you.
Yeah, So I want to speak about the sewer system on Patriots Way, as Mr. Roman brought up, and thank you, Mr. Roman, for bringing this to the attention of the council. We really appreciate that. In our conversations, we spoke about the decision to overlook Patriots Way on this, and it was based on us pretty much opting out or not agreeing to go into the plan for the previous sewer systems that were going in Old Flanders. Again, our stance on that was being 6.5, almost 7 years ago, at costs floating around between $50,000 to $70,000, all said and done per house. Our immediate answer was no, because we could have put in 3 brand new septic tanks for that price. However, you know, we know the new plan, although I don't have exact costs or estimates per home for the new plan, we asked to be considered to be brought into this project, which you have, and you made mention of that tonight. You guys are looking into that. So I think you know, what I'm looking for, and after speaking to other residents on our block, what we're looking for is a little bit of transparency as we go forward with our options, the costs to bring us in at a future date, any estimates as to when that would occur. And one of the concerns that other concerns that I have is, we mentioned, or you mentioned, additional costs for engineering as things would progress. What I would ask for is that cost for additional engineering not be passed on to the homeowners, since we were overlooked in the initial plan, but to keep us in the loop as to what the plan, what the costs would be to our homes, the 6 homes on Patriots Way.
Yeah, I think that's a misunderstanding on your part, that
Sure.
the function of, ultimately, the function of what is assessed to the homeowner is a calculation of assessed increased value to your house.
Right, I heard that before as well,
It's
yeah.
not the cost of the system. It's not
Okay.
the cost of the additional cost of the engineering. It's not the additional cost of running the pipe. It's, once your house is hooked up to the system, your house becomes more valuable and will be assessed by the township at a higher rate. Plus, you also have to pay for the costs associated with your own property.
Correct.
So ultimately, and again, this is what I was talking about, when the fluency of it really, it's a very difficult process, and one that we struggled with for several years. It wasn't that you were overlooked, it was that the project continued to change based upon ultimately people not wanting it, the type of system that we were gonna put in, the number of houses that we were ultimately going to address. So I apologize, I saw all of your posts online. It's not really the way that it happened, and I understand that it may have looked that way to you, and council can address it going forward if they so deem to continue the line up Patriots Way, if that's what the people on the street want to do. But as the project changed and it got smaller, the pipes got smaller, the funding mechanisms for the project became more defined, and we couldn't go back out again and say, okay, we're gonna do a different type of system, and we're gonna include more houses, which would include bigger pipes, and it's just kind of like, I don't know how to describe it, when you go to I don't know how to describe it, it was a very fluid.
It's not a scalable project the way you design.
It's not, it's absolutely true. The system, it ultimately is designed for
So-
the number of houses that you decide to do. So if we went to more houses, it might have been a different system, required more time. And again, the funding mechanism in terms of what gets passed along as an assessed value was not clear until some part that we were further on the process. And as council president indicated, the cost associated, that we found a mechanism to help those people who couldn't afford to tie in ultimately, in terms of the municipality actually floating their costs over a number of years, which we ultimately got a legal determination that we could do, which made it more palatable to those people rather than them coming out and dumping $15,000 to tie off their existing septic. And
Sure.
so I understand where you came from. You know, you say, you know
Right.
what, we didn't want it at $100 grand, but if you tell me I could have it at 10 grand, I want it.
Sure.
And we all want it.
Sure.
And we felt like we were left out. It's not quite that simple.
Right. You know, and my rebuttal to that would be, you're talking 6 houses, and your main pass is right by those 6 houses. Now, I've also heard mention of, we need to get to these cesspool areas to protect our environment. I don't know where the environmental play comes, but you've got 6 houses with 38-year-old septic systems that back up to a feeder creek. If you guys don't want to address it now, and those all fail and contaminate the water, I don't know if we did a survey on this or not, but if you're worried about contaminating water and possibly drinking water, you should have looked at that.
I think that's a function now of whether or not the council is going to make the decision to continue the line up Patriots Way. What is the environmental benefit of spending the money? Is there an environmental factor that would support actually running the line up the road, rather than where we were before, which was, we needed to address the cesspool issue, which is, you can't sell your house with the cesspool.
Correct.
If you have a septic, you can replace the septic, but those people couldn't. And I don't even know how many of them had cesspools, but that's the area where they
Right.
were. So when we defined the area, that's what we did. So I agree with you that if there isn't, ultimately, if the decision is made going forward to connect in, and we can do it engineering-wise, and there's an environmental reason to do, which you've just raised, which, you know, I was unfamiliar with, and
Well, it could be. I'm not an expert, so. Right.
neither am I.
Right. So, you know, I just wanted to thank Mr. Roman again for bringing this to the attention. And, you know, I think right now what we're looking for is just transparency as we go along, to be fed information, so we can all, you know, make the best decisions. And I'll let any of my other residents on Patriots Way speak if they would like to, but that's all I have for now.
I think the most important thing that we can be told with respect to your neighborhood at this point is when there is a failing septic.
Right.
Because let's say there are 3 failing septics on your street, I mean, that is a factor that would be incredibly.
We know 2 have not passed when they were being sold. I know we have, that's a good point, because we have 2 new residents or 3 new residents on Patriots Way. 3? I'm looking at the sidebar over there. So it's 3 new residents since the last time we spoke about this.
Septics never pass.
Yeah, no, I know they never pass. That's, I have a
There's a
family
whole
in construction,
industry.
I know they don't pass.
There's a whole industry out there.
Right, so I know we also had, you know, 3 new additional people on the block who did not have any history on the previous matter, so I think it's good that we bring it to their attention as well.
Well, like I said, you can figure that the cost is probably gonna be somewhere in the neighborhood, all said and done, in the 40 grand, up
So-
to 40 grand. It's
That's all said and done, right?
Yeah, that's basically it's an assessed value, increased value to your house. You
And
pick up-
how did they come up with the assessed value for
The
animal
assessor
disorder?
does it.
The assessor does it? They don't have a specific formula
They
based for
may.
that?
It's like planning, it's Latin.
Mhm.
But he looks at properties which are similarly situated, which have septics, and houses which are
Right.
similarly situated, which have sewers. And
Sure.
you can, I mean, I think that's the way
Basically
that he
comp,
does it.
right.
It's comp.
Yeah.
That's the way assessors generally work. And, you know, so your house, that's the portion ultimately of the project which you're going to pick up. And I would assume that your house now going forward is going to be assessed at the higher level, so your taxes are gonna go up. I don't know what a $25,000 jump is, you know, it's probably pennies a year, I don't know.
Right.
But you're gonna see that, and you're gonna see the tie-in costs.
Sure. What was attractive was the cost benefit. So if you have to put a new septic in when you're leaving, you're going to pay $40,000 anyway.
I can tell you this, if I lived in a house with the septic system and someone told me there was an opportunity to put a sewer in, I would have jumped at it.
Yeah,
in a
well, at the
second.
right cost, right? If they told you it was going to be $70,000, $80,000, you would probably choke.
Maybe.
So,
I would have done like I do with everything else, I just would put it on a credit card.
right. Can I borrow your credit card?
It's maxed out.
Okay, I think that's all I have for now, but I want to thank you guys for addressing the issue.
Thank you.
If I could,
Mr. Roman?
AJ, if I can address, this project has been years in the making, because at the first time that was brought up to me, I recall not wanting to pull the trigger because of the impact that it was gonna have on residents. And it wasn't until this project was scaled down to the point that it was only addressing those residents that had the greatest need that I was comfortable in moving forward, and I think the rest of the council was as well. Because none of us here want to, you know, all of a sudden go to some homeowner whose septic is working well, or they think is working well, and just all of a sudden hit them with a $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 assessment. But that's one of the reasons that we were comfortable going forward.
Right,
Also-
and Alex, I understand that. I mean, I've engineered security solutions for Google and some of the major phone carriers, and if, my position on that, honestly, is if I told them I was going to put a non-scalable system in to service 3 offices in the building, and somebody found that out, I wouldn't have a job anymore. I never think in terms of putting something in that's not going to be scalable to the rest of the community or the rest of an organization.
Well, it's a little bit different when you're addressing a corporation, when the corporation's paying for the
Yeah,
bill.
those differences
versus
aside, I mean-
individual faces that you have to look into, so.
You always have to think of scalability, though. I mean, if you were faced with an environmental issue where something, God forbid, or knock on wood, would happen, and we said we did not design a scalable solution to keep costs down for specific people, that doesn't look good, to anybody that I would
Just to
know.
remind council, your initial plan was to go with the gravity system, which is
Right.
a scalable system.
Right.
But then after further engineering, it became cost prohibitive, and then that's how it got scaled back to, so the initial plan was always
Right.
gravity, just it wasn't-
And the good part, if I could say, the good part about, no, it comes out of the back, but the good part about this that I felt is the, yeah, I know, it sounds like back there. It usually happens to Colleen, but she's not here.
Keep expenses down.
That's right, no, good. The good part that came out of this was, as the mayor indicated, we found an alternative way to help the residents be able to finance that. Because originally it was you have to come up with that lump sum. And even at that point, with the lower cost, I was reluctant, and so was council, to pass that because a lot of people were going through hardships. There was no way they were going to be able to come up with that kind of money
Sure.
to do it. So through this, we end a different mechanism, as you said, the legal channels to be able to do that. And that would help us down the road, as we indicated. We'd love to have sewers everywhere if we can afford to do it and all. But it gives us the opportunity now to go to other areas and look at how it could be cost effective for that as well.
Right.
So, your
Yeah,
area.
and
may-
we're just a small chunk of that
Right,
running
so,
right past it.
and the
so-
good part is, it sounds like it looks like we can add that if we decide to at some point with some engineering, so it's not
Right.
a huge thing, but we're gonna get through this project, I believe, first, and then see from there as we're going.
Right, and
Because
that's-
that's just starting.
Right, that's pretty much, where we came to terms and said, okay, well, let's make sure we have a plan going
Right.
forward. We understand you guys have planned this out, but, let us know if this can scale to our 6 homes, what the options would be. Is it possible? I mean, that's just where we wanted to end.
Right,
up
and I
tonight.
appreciate you came out and let us know, because again, when they first came out, the system was altogether different, the costs were higher. If we brought you in on this, it might, I don't know, at that time, we didn't know if it would be the same cost or not at that point. So now we could figure it out, and at least we know that you guys are interested, and at that point, we can address it and hopefully get that addressed in another year.
We'll
or so.
put in the T-connection, and we'll deal with the next issue next time.
Yep.
Excellent. All
That
right.
works.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, guys.
Thank you.
Take care. Love the new elevator.
Does anyone else from the public wish to be heard at this time? Yes, sir. Just state your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, my name is Dale Webb, property owner at 22 Park Place, Flanders. And this kind of maybe not off topic, but just to verify that it will still be coming down the pike. I had spoke a couple of times about homeowners closing up their own septics. And I think, Mayor, you had mentioned that guidelines would be available in your office and at the clerk's office. Is that still your intent?
That's my intent.
Yeah, I'm working on it. I have the notes from the health department and building department, so we can put them together and
Okay.
make it.
That is the intent.
Yeah.
Okay. I
As
just
long
wanted to
as-
make sure that that was still going to be.
As long as it's going to be done properly with the proper inspections, it's all good.
Okay. All right. That's it. Thank you.
Excuse me, Dale, could you spell your last name, please?
WEBB.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I thought it was 3 Bs.
Does anyone else from the public wish to be heard at this time? That's okay. Name and address for the record, please.
My name is Teresa Petroselli, and I live at 5 Winchester Avenue. And I'm just kind of following up, and if you discussed this in the beginning, I'm sorry I was late, as to whether we've looked at the fence on Sand Shore Road.
The fence on Sand Shore Road was looked at the next day. It is our fence. It's not a brand-new fence, but it didn't seem like it was in dire need of repairs for any safety
Where it's leaning
reason.
in. Because the water comes right up to that, and it's elementary school children that are walking past that.
Well, if there's basic repairs that need to be done, we could make it straight again.
I looked at the fence too as I drove by, and I didn't think it had anything to do with water. It was more just,
Oh,
I
no,
mean,
the-
the kids falling into the water.
Well, there's water right up against it.
Yeah, Tim, why can't you just straighten that fence?
Done.
When are you going to do it?
Thank you.
And also, I think Andrew has an update in terms of what's being done with the other issues that you've raised.
I asked the chief to reach out to you to schedule a meeting.
Corporal Russell, who is the only one who
Yes.
ever reaches out to me, even though he was not on the letter that I sent.
Well, he's in charge of the crossing guards. There's a meeting being scheduled, so.
Yes, for next week.
Yeah, we'll discuss all your other safety issues and.
And I'm not trying to be mean, but it's 6 months.
I hear you. Meeting's next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else from the public wish to be heard at this time? Yes, sir. Just again, just state your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, everyone. Jonathan Bamber, 31 Park Place. Just a quick question regarding Ordinance 18, 2019. I'm reading back in the notes here. It says there will be no change in the special assessment levied on the 39 property owners. However, the sewage utility will contribute the difference to the cost of the improvement. That last part, I was just wondering if I could get a little clarification on that, maybe a little bit more insight.
We run our sewer as a utility, so it's a separate fund from our general fund, meaning that the increased cost will come out of existing funding that's in the sewage authority
Okay,
and not be assessed as against the homeowners.
okay,
So whatever you are going to pay before this particular ordinance is what you're going to be paying after this particular ordinance.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else from the public wish to be heard at this time? Seeing none, close to the public. Any council comments? Mr. Amianda? Mr. Ferrante?
None.
Mr. Mania?
Yeah, just again, I want to thank the administration for the FOP contract. Great job. Thank you.
They did have help from the finance department as well, so kudos to them.
Mr. Stewart?
And none tonight.
Mr. Roman?
I just once again want to give my condolences to the family of State Senator Bucco on his sudden passing. His decades of legislative leadership is going to be sorely missed.
Agreed, thank you. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So
So
moved.
moved. Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, and thank you, everyone.